No questions? Any counselor concerns?
How about that freeway?
About that freeway.
That is a concern.
Got a street light out at the corner of 4th and Boone's Ferry that's been out for at least 4 months. Don't know
What'd you
what's
say?
going on. 4th and Boone's Ferry. Excuse me, not, 4th and
Is this
Boone's
the
Ferry.
one that you copied Delora on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's happening.
We have reported it to PG, I know
So
that.
how long does it take?
I don't know, we'll find out.
Okay, I do have a concern.
Counselor Lehan.
Yes, I think the I-5 incident today warrants some comment on our part, on the city of Wilsonville's part, or some, whatever. Because we are frequently criticized for traffic issues when I-5 fails, when the Boone Bridge fails, but when I-5 fails. And it's somehow our fault that our roads are not sufficient to handle traffic in Wilsonville. But today demonstrates that when I-5 fails, no local streets can handle that traffic. It was failing all across the region. Champoeg Road, Butteville Road, on into St. Paul. It was failing to, the Canby Ferry was backed up. 99E was backed up. We're backed up into Lake Oswego. All the northbound routes are failing because I-5 traffic, when I-5 fails, there is no way local streets, certainly not Wilsonville, but not even Highway 43 or 99E can handle the offloading of I-5 into the rest of the world. And I think we need to be more on top of when incidents like this happen, getting photographs. I mean, you know,
For the local roads, you mean?
the local roads, Butteville, Champoeg, Miley, everything was backed up. You couldn't get in and out of Canby, Knights Bridge. I mean, I talked to lots of people trying to find ways around, and it was backed up for miles in every direction, including 99E. There's just no way when you dump all the traffic off of I-5 onto these surface roads, they don't have the capacity. Wilsonville doesn't, and neither does anything else in the region. And I think we need to make that case, or be prepared to make that case, or keep that evidence, maintain that evidence that I-5 failing does not mean that Wilsonville's done a bad job of planning for our traffic any more than it does that Canby has done a bad job planning for their traffic, just because they were failing today also. But it's not Canby's fault, and it's not our fault. It's when I-5 fails, the whole region can't handle that volume of traffic. And we need to collect that so we can make our case.
Well, it's kind of late for us to get pictures today.
It's late today.
It will happen again.
But those pictures that we are using on the front of that legislative thing
Yeah.
are pictures I took 20 years ago.
That was 20 years ago?
Of I-5 gridlock.
Yeah, no, that's a great picture.
I mean, if you remember, there was that incident, I don't know, a summer or two ago, where the kids got stuck on the school bus till 7 because there was just, and it wasn't even a traffic, I don't think, it was just like pure horrific I-5 gridlock, and the whole city was just like in chaos, and everybody was, you know, it took like an hour to get to Fred Meyer's, and it was a nightmare. So it will happen again, maybe not to the same extent. Drone photos would be fantastic. I don't know, like
Nice to have drone photos.
drone photos. You could go regionally. It would be awesome to get good drone
The difference
photos.
between that one 20 years ago when I shot those pictures off the Beckman overpass was it was a fatal at the river and involved a spill at the river. So it was shut down for like 12 hours. if this had been a fatal, it would have greatly expanded the amount of shutdown time, because the investigation, they have to bring in investigators, you have to wait for them to get on the scene, they have to do all these measurements, they have to do a whole lot more when you have a fatal or some exacerbating situation, like a hazardous material spill or something that's, in that case, was, threatening the Willamette River. So there are all those things that can collide here. Today's was minor compared to that one, but I didn't go up on Beckman to see what the photographs would have been like shooting off of the Beckman overpass. But I'm sure they would have been similar. But we should be, that's all I'm saying. I just think we need to be able to make that case.
I wonder if the experience affected a lot of legislators trying to get to Salem, and if it would raise the profile of the Boone Bridge project relative to other current need or not, and how to explore
It's
that.
like when we have people coming in, everybody's got a camera now. So when we have people coming in down Viewville Road, or employees coming in who can't come in, because, I mean, they can take pictures.
Can't use your cell phone while you're driving.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
you're
I know,
not,
you're not driving.
You're not
parked.
moving, you're stuck.
I know that.
Or pull over and take some pictures. If you've got a good shot of some road that is nowhere near Wilsonville, that it has stopped, it's not working, that's how to demonstrate. It's not us whining about Wilsonville, it's that Viewville Road isn't working, and neither is Champoeg Road, or St. Paul is stopped up. It's all those other things, and when we have employees trying to get in who can't get in, it's an opportunity.
So noted. We did hear last night that they are going to issue a design contract or something of that sort for the bridge seismic retrofit. Did you want to speak to that real quickly, Zach?
Zach Weigel, Capital Projects Engineering Manager. Thank you. Zach Weigel, Capital Projects Engineering Manager. And yeah, last night I heard for the first time at the I-5 pedestrian bridge open house that ODOT is about to select the consultant to do the I-5 or the Boone Bridge study. So that work is moving forward.
So we're making some progress.
Right.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, well, I don't know if we have, when it's this congested, no one person can get around to all those different points. So unless city staff had kind of a standing plea that, if you get caught in that, take some pictures before.
I mean, we can certainly ask people, as long as they're not driving.
No, right.
I don't want to have to pay
do
their cell phone
unsafe.
tickets,
Yeah.
'cause those are like $1,000 now.
That's what you do with city drone. Yeah, drone.
City drone, all right.
You could even ask a real estate company, it'd be like, they do them for houses. A lot of these houses will do the
Yeah.
drone photos from the backyard, say, hey, or if we have one, I think it's a great idea. It's great photos. That picture tells 1,000 words. Maybe it's a little out there. I don't know how many city drones exist, but I think it's.
Zero.
I don't know.
We don't have any.
We don't have it.
We could also kind of not contract, but or make arrangements with a photographer, a photographic company who does drone photographing. They do it for golf courses and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. So that if we just made a phone call, we'd pay them by the, whatever their hour, whatever their rate is. But they could be on standby, so we could make a very quick call. They'd be up and in the air and gone. So.
All right.
Outside the box, but effective.
Okay, let's move on to our regularly scheduled stuff here then, starting with the library strategic plan. Mr. Duke.
You got any drones over at the library, the Library of
Library of
Things?
Things, yeah.
No.
Okay.
I was just thinking about it, though, actually, as you were talking. Good evening, Mayor Knapp, councilors. I just want to talk for a few minutes about the strategic plan process that we have just begun. As you may know, we are finishing up a plan that we started in about 2014. And over that time, we have renovated the library. We have created an outreach librarian position for the library. And we have strengthened our partnerships with local organizations, in particular the school district and the Historical Society. But as we look forward, we have questions about how we are going forward. How should we reach out to reach the entire community, particularly those who do not use the library and maybe never have? How should we change our collections? In particular, with the popularity of ebooks and downloadable audio and steering streaming services and moving those into our collections. How do we increase our programming in the library, particularly for adults? How do we continue to develop the library as a community space for everyone? For this, we have selected a consultant who is attached to the Friends of the St. Paul, Minnesota Public Libraries. They have actually been doing this since the middle of the 1980s. They've been all across the country. And so they have developed a key public element process. And so, first of all, we'll be creating a steering committee to provide a high-level oversight for the process, and who will be helping us select upwards of 60 people to attend a retreat in April, and who will be reviewing the plan at the end. And Councilor Agrawal has agreed to join us, so thank you so much. We will also be putting out a survey for the community, and we will be hosting that on Let's Talk Wilsonville for folks. And in addition to that, we will be doing one-on-one interviews within the community, as doing focus groups. The cornerstone for the public process will be a retreat that is in April, and that is where we'll be identifying visions and goals for the library. We hope to be done by the end of June. And obviously, during that process, we will be reaching out to council to let you know what we're doing and get your thoughts. So I'd be happy to answer any questions as we start.
Council, any questions now? Only one I can think of is whether you're going to hire a drone to do your high-level oversight.
Apparently, yes.
Forward thinking.
All right, we'll look forward with interest to watching this evolve.
idea.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have residential code modernization. Mr. Pauly.
Good evening, and be grateful you didn't sit through the 5 planning commission work sessions on this.
They are.
Be grateful for your planning commission. They do a great job. So we're talking about this project that's
Yeah, a little bit.
been around for a bit. I mean, the code's been around for a bit that we're dealing with. And so first of all, I want to talk about why we're taking on a project like this, or why we've been working on this. Really ties back to that notion of excellence and continuous improvement. Really around residential, making sure our residential standards are clear and concise, and making sure that they're feasible to use and fit the type of development that we tend to see nowadays. The one thing to point out on this is where it actually impacts and matters. The changes are most applicable to about 63 acres of unbuilt or underbuilt land that's zone plan development residential. It does not apply to Villebois or Frog Pond or to existing neighborhoods that are zone plan development residential unless they're redeveloped on a large scale.
South Coffee Creek?
Well, there's no
sorry,
residential up there.
Not Coffee Creek. Canyon Creek is what
Yes,
Can we go
south,
back to that map?
Yeah,
Sorry.
can we go back to the map?
Mentor
Yes.
property?
No, I was thinking about the.
yeah, the Mentor property, the residential land south of Wilsonville Road and Canyon Creek Road South. Those are the main areas.
It's okay.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
map question? On the left side by Villebois, that's kind of what you were just talking about with, that's that kind of industrial, not residential, marshy area. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
Okay,
This is only for residential.
over on that lower left side.
Are you talking about the green parcels?
No, like that first circle, is that,
Oh.
that's not resident, is that residential? Isn't that like,
Yeah.
No, that's residential. That, it's a series of historically like 2-acre lots, a lot of which have actually already been redeveloped, or a
Okay.
number of them have. And there's still some remaining ones of there that we've historically seen a lot of development interest in.
okay,
Straight out Wilsonville Road
yeah.
to Brown.
Okay, I'm with you now. Sorry, it's hard to see from here.
I know.
I'm tracking.
I can't see it either.
I know where it is
Yeah,
now.
so yeah,
Thank
this
you.
isn't, sorry,
Yes.
it doesn't have a lot of labels on it.
What
And it's
2-acre
little.
parcels are we talking about?
Oh, sorry, I thought he was talking about Canyon Creek Road South.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so yeah,
Burnage
He's
is
talking
big-
about Brown Road.
Burnage is big stuff.
yeah, where the orchard was.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Montebello.
Nursery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
And so you're talking about the northernmost.
so that's Maurice
oval
down
circle that
there.
we see on the map.
Correct.
When you
That's
were referring to
Wilsonville.
the 2-acre, yeah.
That's where,
Yeah.
Okay,
that's my
and
house.
some of those
Okay,
have
I'm
already
with you.
moved, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for indulging.
not a problem. So really a bit of background on the approach here, and is first of all, the planned development residential zone, most of that code language is 20 years old now. There have been a couple updates in 2005 regarding open space, and then a couple changes related to accessory dwelling units. And at the same time, we have a pretty modern residential standard in the residential neighborhood zone, which was adopted in 2017 for Frog Pond. So in looking at this, we really wanted to take advantage of all that work that was done for Frog Pond. Is really that our end zone took the best components or from our experience in Villebois and implementing the village zone, as well as our experience implementing the planned development residential zone, and mixing in model code and best practices to really come up with that RN zone. So now the idea is we want to take out those issues that we've identified in the PDR zone and insert those portions or similar things as the residential neighborhood zone, and then mix in, again, lessons learned and best practices to come up with code that will allow the best, efficient use of what's left of this residential land within the city. So this can, really what we're looking at can be broken down into 2 topic areas. The first being density and lot size, and the other one being open space requirements. So I have a series of questions I just want to present that I'll answer, then I'll have some for you eventually. But first one, under density calculations and lot sizes, how to fix inconsistencies. As can happen with code, inconsistencies come up, conflicts. There's a number of these that we're proposing to fix. There's some typos apparently in the comprehensive plan where the comprehensive plan map and the comprehensive plan text don't match up. We're simply fixing that. And then for residential densities, there's densities on the comprehensive plan map, and that's supposed to somehow correlate with the different plan development residential zones. However, both the comprehensive plan and the zoning text define that, how those interrelate and transition, and those descriptions are not consistent. So taking that language out of the comprehensive plan and having one central location that shows that the conversion from the comprehensive plan density ranges to the various zoning codes. The next one is clarifying how density is calculated. The big thing to point out there here is we're not changing any density policy. The idea is we're making the code match the way that we've been doing this for a number of years and how we've been implementing the code as is. So currently it's not clear whether it's based on gross area or the whole, all the land, or net area, which is after you take out things like right-of-way. What we've arrived at and recommending is what we are calling buildable gross area, which doesn't take out right-of-way and such, but does take out significant resource overlay zone and the Bonneville Power Administration easements, which is the way that density is calculated in Frog Pond. The other question is how to ensure what I call land consuming requirements do not exceed available land. Make sure the math works when a developer is trying to plan a site. So there's a number of these standards that take up land. These include density combined with lot size, the minimum amount of open space, and also requirements for streets and requirements for stormwater treatment areas. So in order to make the math work in typical circumstances, it didn't as the code's written, so which leads to a lot of requests for waivers. We reduced the minimum lot size in a couple of zones to make sure that the math works in typical circumstances. At the same time, proposing what we call a adjustment process that has identified ways to adjust the different standards if you do have a unique site where the math still doesn't quite work out. It provides a lot more clarity for all the parties involved. For open space, the first question is what counts as open space? This doesn't change that much. The list we have in the code, for the most part, stays the same. The one area that we're adjusting is the percent of private yards that count as open space. The city's gone back and forth on this over the years. Prior to 2005, most of the open space was able to be met by private yards, and then there was a code change in 2005 that removed that allowance, that now doesn't allow any private yard to be counted. That has then led to sometimes the math not working out because other requirements that consume land weren't taken into consideration at that point. And really, again, here then we're taking what was developed, because this was discussed as well during the Frog Pond process of how do we handle this question. And there was a determination there, and which we're mirroring here, which says that for lot 6,000 square feet and larger, 10% of that lot can be counted towards open space. But for lots less than 6,000, none of the yards count towards required open space. So then another question, it's quite obvious, is how much open space? Traditionally, or the current code uses what I call a tiered approach, where so from anywhere from 4 to 49 lots, the requirement's the same. and then from 50 to 100 lots, the requirement's the same. This goes away from that to use more of a percentage approach, again, similar to Frog Pond. And that also requires that half of the open space outside the SROZ is also planned and as usable open space. The final question about open space is, does open space add value? If you have just a numerical requirement to get this many acreage of open space, that can lead to situations where, a developer will put it here and there, and it ends up not having much added value and can become a liability for the owner, such as a homeowners association. So to address this, the proposal establishes a minimum size, first of all, for open spaces at 2,000 square feet, so you don't get any odd-shaped small things. And also requires, when usable open space is required, that it's not just putting down a park bench or a picnic table, but that it's professionally designed by a credentialed landscape architect. So without really looking tonight from the council, questions you have on what's proposed, and also feedback for staff and the planning commission before we finalize a recommendation for you.
Councilor Linville.
I have some questions. If I recall, I think the open space question about using private yards for meeting the open space requirement was used in Frog Pond, correct?
Right, there was quite a discussion during the Frog Pond planning process on that.
Right. And I wondered about it at the time when we were having that discussion, but it seemed to me that what was on the books at the current time was not to do that. Is that correct?
So the current code for the planned development residential zone does not allow any private yards to be counted as open space. So this would allow that 10% of the larger lots to be counted.
Okay.
I have a question.
So
6,000 square feet or
I
larger.
I have still a couple. My concern about that, I guess I don't understand where the 10% number, where does it come from? Is there data to support that 10% of the lot size can be used toward open space? And the reason that I'm asking that is when you have 700, let's say 700 dwelling units, and and each of those average between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet in the lots, you're talking about a lot of open space that is being removed and put into private yards that with no usable space. So I'm wondering, where did the 10% number come from?
Sure. So again, there was a lot of discussion. That's the number that came out of Frog Pond, but also looked at it, looking at a 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lot. And if you take out front yards, side yards, how much, green is typically left with setbacks in that rear yard. And it's ballpark the same, like 10%. And note that it's only 10%. So even if your whole subdivision was 6,000 to 7,000 square foot or 6,000 square foot lots, 10%, you're required 25%. So you're still going to have a substantial park with backyards that are usable for gatherings or for throwing a ball or things like that. So there is a usability aspect when you get to that 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lot, that it typically the width of the lot is such that you could actually throw a ball or kick a ball around or have more room to gather for an activity, have neighbors over or whatever. So there is some usability that's added once you hit some thresholds there.
So the dwelling itself on a 6,000 square foot lot would take up how much of that lot?
Well, the lot coverage is typically, it's like 50%, I believe, is what the current, or what the for that size. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's something like 40 to 50%.
So in the current in the current plan, in the current comprehensive plan, I think there is an emphasis on open space and environment. Is it, I mean, isn't that statement still in the comprehensive
Yes.
plan? Okay. Yeah, and so I'm just wondering about whether the rationale to take out that amount of open space away from parks and, play fields and those kinds of things and put it into taking, it is a benefit more to the developer than it is to the residents as a community. And that's where I'm just wondering my concern over that piece. It seems to me that by taking it out, it allows the developer to put more units, dwelling units on that property because we're taking away the requirement for the open space. And so that's just my concern and
Sure.
about that.
And as we can see through our history, there's two sides of the story and feelings on both. And that's where the approach on this is really looking at what happened after a rigorous debate on this with Frog Pond and where was the council's decision at that point. And it seems fresh enough that that would still stand here. And also as we tested it and discussed with the Planning Commission, that there were, for those reasons, again, the threshold that there is a usability that's added, that people do actually use a larger backyard as open space versus, counting a small side yard as open space. And that there is more space and green, even space for wildlife in backyards in a neighborhood that may have larger yards than one that has smaller yards. So, it's certainly a topic that's been discussed for years, and this is where we've arrived through discussion and continues to make sense to staff and as we discussed with the Planning Commission as we talk through the different scenarios.
So I just have two other questions. One is, it seemed to me that the old standard for those larger developments was a percentage, wasn't it? It was like 25% of the, if it had a number of lots. It was, I can't find it exactly in this spot, but it looks like the new language went to actual square footage. So in a development where there was, 0 to X number, they would have 1,000 square feet of open space versus at a larger one, they'd have 2,000. I didn't see where the percentage was in the plan, where the calculation was.
So it's a straight calculation of 25% of net area as proposed, half of which needs to be usable open space, half of which if it's outside the SROZ.
Okay, all right.
The numbers, like the 2,000 square foot numbers, that's just a minimum for an individual space. So, you're not going to have a 200 square foot open space or something. So if you have an open space tract, it needs to be at least 2,000 square feet. So it's large enough that, you can plan a plaza or something usable there.
Right. And then on the maximum and minimum densities, the range district, I think it's, I guess it's page 30 of 154. It talks about, it goes from whole numbers to decimals.
Yes.
How are you what is going to happen when you have a 2.4? Is it rounded down or rounded up? Does it end up being a whole number anyway?
Yeah, it states in the code that you round it. It states the whole rounding methodology in the code.
Okay. But that was done to get to the 80%.
Yeah,
right?
because it's driven and certain, you can't have all whole numbers when you have an 80% requirement because not every number has 80% of not every number is a whole number.
Okay. And just the last thing, the 16 to 20 units is for it's in the multifamily category, right?
Yeah, and again, well, not again, but that has, in reality, not a lot of applicability because nothing's zoned that. and nor do we anticipate anything being zoned
Okay.
that we know of.
All right,
But
Thank you.
it's in the code, and we want it
just
to
consistent.
match, to be consistent, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor West?
I had a similar question as council, that was just raised. So in Villebois, when you think of open space in a neighborhood, I think of Villebois the most, especially the arbor portion that was built initially in its concept. And you said no yards into the city up to this point are considered open space currently, so this would be a change. Would this type of development lend for builders to potentially create that more, I don't know, you feel like you're living in a park a little bit in parts of Villebois? And would it motivate that type of building to the benefit of the residents, which I think it kind of harkens on to Councilor Linville's question? Or do we, because I didn't really get an answer, or I didn't really hear one, or would it lead to more of the builders benefiting and not having so much outdoor livability and accessibility and that type of environment that you might see in Villebois? And I don't know if I'm even using the best example.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on that.
I follow you. So Villebois is, and this, Villebois was developed in a sense that it was master planned. So, I mean, these calculations were never really done. But there are other examples, and we've done analysis, and I have spreadsheets that is part of those wonderful long work sessions that really look at existing neighborhoods and, you know, what their current open space is, particularly because a lot of the neighborhoods, things like Arbor Crossing and Renaissance at Canyon Creek, were developed during those early 2000s when it was not, when open space was allowed to be part of rear yards. And we went through and analyzed how much more open space would be required in those neighborhoods versus what was built. And, it was interesting, and I'm happy to share those numbers with you. I mean, I won't take the time to do it now, but it continued to make sense with what is proposed here and what was discussed in Frog Pond, that those numbers still worked and you'd get similar development with not a significant more open space, but open space that really serves the neighborhood, because you want to make sure it's the right amount. And so, I mean, there's a balance between, you want to be efficient with the land to meet other policy objectives such as number of homes and things like that, but yet have livable neighborhoods and trying to strike a balance. So it's something that, based on those previous discussions, seems appropriate, and we've tried to truth test it through this process, looking at existing neighborhoods, and it continues to make sense.
I know we're running out of time. We're out of time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask how SROZ is calculated with regards to this, or is it taken into account if you have a lot of SROZ in a next to or with a given neighborhood? Is that a factor at all?
Yes. So SROZ can be counted as open space. It's one of those items that can be counted as open space, but the code also requires that if you are, like, for example, on Canyon Creek Road South, a lot of those are 50% plus SROZ, those lots, that 10% of that area outside the SROZ still needs to be usable open space. So you still maintain some level of usable open space in those scenarios.
Accounting for SROZ?
Yeah.
Okay, that was it.
I'm troubled by the same issues, and I'm reading the language here, and I'm not getting to the same point that you are describing.
Okay.
4.113, open space. A, purpose, B, at least 25% of the net developable area shall be preserved in open space.
Correct.
a lot of other things. For developments of 4 to 10 units, in other places it says 10 or more, which would imply it should be 4 to 9, not 4 to 10. Again, you need to look at the consistency question here, because I'm not sure we're there. Developments with 4 to 10 units and open space must be at least 1,000 square feet to be counted toward open space. Okay, 1,000 square feet is 30 feet by 30 feet, essentially. Not real big. Get down to C, usable programmed open space requirement. Half of non-SROZ open space must be usable and programmed for active recreational use. Minimum amount of usable open space, regardless of the amount of SROZ, in a subdivision of 10 or more lots. See there again, they're lumping 10 with the larger, not with the 4 to
That's an
10. It
easy
should be
fix.
4 to 9. I mean,
So can I recommend that, when are you hoping to get this adopted?
So Planning Commission has it on their agenda in March
For
Right.
public hearing.
for public hearing.
So.
Or we can do March 11th.
So we could put this back on work session for the first meeting in March.
Yes,
Let's do that. Because we are supposed to start at 7 and 7:11.
yes.
Oh,
So I would just recommend if you have additional questions or concerns, if we need to set up one-on-one meetings with you, we can do whatever we need to do to
Happy
facilitate
to.
this so that we're not missing the public hearing for planning commission.
Yeah.
So
And happy
Dan's your main contact.
yeah, and happy to get some more details and on the open
And will you just
space.
compile any questions that come in from electeds, keep track of them, your
Yep.
responses, and then we'll share it with the whole group.
Yep, happy to do that. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so we're out of time, and we'll call adjourn at 7:03 on that clock I've been using. And meet downstairs right away.
we're all on the same page.
I don't know.